we have perhaps moved one tiny judicial step away from modern debtors' prisons, and that is thanks to a court ruling concerning the actions of the Orleans Parish Criminal District Court, which had instituted what should be something from the dark reaches of American history. U.S. District Judge Sarah Vance ruled that the 14th Amendment prohibits jailing criminal defendants who are unable to pay court-ordered fees and fines without giving them a chance to plead poverty. Vance found that the parish we were talking about has a practice of issuing fees while ignoring criminal defendants' financial states and jailing them when they fail to pay. And so an OPCDC, that's the parish judge named in the suit, estimated that 95% of criminal convicts in the parish cannot afford an attorney, putting them at risk for being jailed upon failure to pay. And for reasons we'll get into in just a little bit, they seem fully aware of the consequences of this policy that they're setting up, how they will personally benefit from it, and how obviously the poorest among us will end up in jail. Where, by the way, if you're the sort of person that can't afford to pay for an attorney or for your fines and fees, you are at least prepared to spend extra time in jail, probably losing your job, maybe losing your apartment. If you have a business, you'd be losing that as well.
Yeah. And not only that, I remember back at AJ Plus, we did a whole breakdown of this, and it's just insane, right? So they call it actually offender-funded justice. So not only is it people who are not able to pay for their, let's say it's a parking ticket, or let's say they were driving without a license or it expired or whatever, then not only is it like everything's piling on top, so like the fees increase, but at the point where you have to, let's say, do like a drug test, or you have to even spend a night in prison, or wear an ankle bracelet, or have a DNA, like all these different tests, you pay for that. But actually the people who are being fined, the so-called prisoners, are then further in debt, and it's just this horrible debt spiral. And there are, on top of that, probation companies, like privatized probation companies, everyone's just making a killing off of the 14th Amendment not being applied and observed, and then another Supreme Court ruling in '83 that doubled down on that. So this is a huge benefit. I mean, but we're talking 40 states have debtor-funded justice or offender-funded justice,
which the judges get they get rich off of.
So Vance has ruled now, changing the policy, that now judges who directly benefit from fees cannot order payment or determine who's unable to pay. They had the fees were being collected each year, put into this big fund, and then the judges were using that for benefits, paying for staff and things like that, which is just about the sickest thing I could imagine.
It's such an open conflict of interest.
Yeah, so I mean, if you can't quite believe what we're saying, let me just be clear. The judge says, okay, you have to pay fines, and those fines go towards not just the staff salaries, but to extra benefits for the judge, which of course gives them an incentive to put more fines and fees, and also gives them an incentive to imprison you so that there's more consequences for you not paying those fines and fees that goes straight into sometimes literally his pocket. I mean, you can't find a bigger conflict of interest. So this ruling is really important, and I hope that it gets upheld, and it does follow Supreme Court precedent. They were using a loophole to try to get around it. And so that leads to two more things about this that's really important. I have to confess that I had a little bit of privilege here. So, for a long time, I was very poor as a struggling talk show host, etc. But my family is okay. It's the upper middle class. They're not rich, but we lived in a nice suburb off of New York, etc. And we never had, if I went to prison, I never had to worry whether my dad was gonna bail me out or not. He'd find a way to bail me out. And so I never understood enough to what degree we put poor people in prison for being poor. So, and there's a couple of different ways that you do that. One is bail. So if you're rich or middle class, you have enough money for bail and you're free to go until your trial. If you're poor, you sit in prison even though you haven't been convicted. So that's an absolute outrage, and that needs to be reformed. It's because it's not about the crime. It's about whether you are poor or rich. That's the only reason why you're in jail. Because if the crime was bad enough, they'd say you can't get bail,
no matter
or you're
what.
a danger, or you're a flight risk, right? That's a different category. Bail is just to theoretically incentivize you to come back. For a rich person, $5,000 bail is nothing. That's not an incentive at all. For a poor person, $5,000 bail is totally unpayable. And that means you're gonna sit in prison sometimes years before you get to this. And now there's these fines and fees. And then the second part is, A lot of private companies buy
Disgusting.
the fines of the government. Now, why do they do that? One, they're gonna hound you till the rest of your life to collect that. But secondly, they then get the power to imprison you. They cannot imprison you for a private debt, but they can imprison you for a public debt. So they buy public debt knowing that they could use the justice system to take away your freedom to pay them money. So so that kind of oppression of the poor and some portion of the middle
vulture,
class.
just like micro vulture capitalism.
Also, people will plead guilty to things that they're not guilty of because they can't afford to sit in, like during the trial.
Absolutely. So there might be a situation that this happens all the time on Rikers Island.
Yeah.
Actually, Ocasio-Cortez partly ran on this in her campaign because Rikers Island's in her district, where you go to a prosecutor might go to a poor defendant and go, look, man, you confess whether you did it or you didn't do it, and you're gonna get 3 months. If you don't confess, it's gonna take you a year to get a trial. I mean, think about, so the guy thinks, well, I mean, rational person doesn't want to sit in jail for a year, no matter what, even if they're perfectly innocent. But then you have to admit that you were guilty, and then that's on your record, and then that cycle of poverty continues. So if you're not poor or lower middle class and you never experienced this, please open your eyes to it and understand that we're supposed to be a country of freedom and equality, and this is the exact opposite. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.